the final video of the hour. Chat, we are here. We are here, 82 Society. Hold on, let's close this up. You know what I'm saying? We are here, brothers and sisters. You know, let's open that up again. I don't need y'all seeing the playlist of what I got cooking up. But we are here with the continuation of Hunter x Hunter. I said we gotta read Hunter x Hunter. So we watching my boy New World Review talk to us about these next two arcs that are, well, not ongoing. Well, yeah, they're ongoing. Yeah, they're ongoing. What am I talking about? Yeah, we're gonna dive into this. This takes place right after the anime ends, I believe. Hopefully, picks up right after. This is 2 hours of content. We're gonna break this up into parts. I'm gonna go ahead, write the timestamps down, and we gonna, you know, this is gonna be a journey of ours, so we could, you know, get back into it. But actually, hold on. Just so I'm sure. Hold on. Illaway. Okay. Wait a second. Wait, hold on. Hunter x Hunter manga after anime. 40. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we're supposed to watch this. Okay.
The known Hunter x Hunter world.
Like I said before in all my other videos, his channel will be in the description of the video and also the title, so you can know which video this is, but y'all already see it. But I'm doing that regardless, you know, to fill out the description, but you know, to also show support to, you know, the creators that we watch. So, you know, let's dive into this. You know what I'm saying?
Contains a lot of
these new two arcs. Let's dive into it.
Familiar looking continent things, because most of the Hunter x Hunter landmasses are just real-world continents that have had a bit of a trip and a fall, which is very handy to give you a sense of scale. The Hunter x Hunter world is about as big as Earth, at least the human part, because the truth of Hunter x Hunter is that the entirety of the human realm exists within the center of a mind-bogglingly gigantic patch of water known as Lake Mobius. And beyond that lake is an inconceivably and unmeasurably large landmass that is collectively known as the Dark Continent. And whether it was planned or not, the Dark Continent is more or less the catalyst for every event that has ever happened in Hunter x Hunter, as reaching this location is the goal that Jing left Gon to accomplish. It's a destination full of treasures and discoveries that could elevate humanity to a new form of existence overnight, as well as calamities that could erase humanity's existence even more swiftly than overnight, probably more like by lunchtime. But the truth of the Hunter x Hunter world is that everything humanity has done is woefully insignificant to the concept of greater life on this planet. Humans are a teeny tiny ant colony that has only been allowed to exist as long as it has had a locational advantage. And in fact, humans are even lower on the pecking order than ants, because we've already experienced the Dark Continent's equivalent of ants, which came startlingly close to easily causing an apocalyptic scale event. And as a bit of a terrifying statistic, if you add up every known voyage to the Dark Continent, there is a combined survival rate of 0.04%. With everything we know about the Dark Continent, there is a resounding conclusion that this is not a place that we should dare step foot, because even their lowest form of life threaten the existence of the human race. So what hope does anyone have once we start encountering the secondary and even apex predators of this planet? Well, surprisingly, there is a little. Several centuries ago, the most important book in the Hunter x Hunter world was published. It was called Journey to the New World, and it detailed the findings of a certain explorer who had traveled to the Dark Continent and apparently literally survived to tell the tale. And this book was met with very poor reception, terrible Amazon reviews. It was considered to be fiction, and not only that, but like real bad fiction. Journey to the New World was review bombed into obscurity, dismissed as the ramblings of a lunatic, and its invaluable information.
Oh, there it goes.
Remains found twisted into grotesque shapes, people withered and shrunk beyond all recognition, severed body parts regrowing themselves and clinging to life, decapitated bodies with unknown growths residing within them, as well as sightings of terrifying paranormal creatures that put the governments of all of the world's major nations on high alert. And all of this phenomena was detailed in Journey to the New World, which was then adopted as mandatory reading for those in high-level positions, now aware that the very fate of humanity lay within the writings of a lunatic. In reality, what the human realm was experiencing experiencing were the calamities of the Dark Continent. Creatures that had been unintentionally brought back from previous voyages, of which there have been many. But there are 5 calamities in particular that threaten to destroy humanity on a now daily basis. The first is the botanical weapon Brion, native to a labyrinth city located 400 kilometers north of Lake Mobius. It's a species that wiped out all but 2 members of an expedition led by the United States of Saherta, appearing as a human body with a botanical sphere attached to the head. What's horrifying about Brion is the unknown. We don't know if this visual is the entity, or if the entity has infected and fused with a human host. One clue we do have is what...
Hold up, chat. Alright.
Looks like a victim of Brion stored in the V5 facility. It looks as if the sphere was removed and the stomach ruptured to reveal an unknown substance within.
Yeah,
all in all, it doesn't look to be too pleasant of a fate to endure. And ultimately, what we do know is that it was unstoppable and killed hundreds of elite explorers like that. The second calamity is the twin snake Hellbell, native to the swamplands directly south of Lake Mobius and encountered by the Federation of Ochima. Much to their misfortune, as Hellbell is capable of infecting its prey with pure homicidal desire, which wiped out 99% of their expedition party, leaving only 11 survivors.
Crazy.
Of the 5 calamities, Hellbell is the only one that we don't have direct evidence of yet in the human realm. Hellbell is there, lurking somewhere, and its effects could very well be masked, because it's ultimately the prey of Hellbell that does all the killing. So any mad murder sprees could be a result of Hellbell. That, or humans have just been lucky enough not to stumble upon Hellbell's new habitat yet. For a more enduring fate, the third calamity is named Pap, which was located in a mountain range slightly east of where Brion was encountered. And this is a calamity which human eyes have never actually seen, because the Pap remain lurking in the darkness. However, they administer pleasure to people and feed off their life force in exchange for that pleasure. So the Pap keeps you as food whilst making you think that this is a great deal for you. Not just food though, it is specifically mentioned that the Pap enjoy keeping humans as pets, which brings a whole new sinister layer to this arrangement, indicating that the Pap enjoy keeping their humans. However, they are eventually discarded, with previous victims of Pap having been found in the human world, indicating that the Pap are very active and are an ever-present threat to humanity. And it was the misfortune of the Burgerossa Union who encountered Pap on the Dark Continent, and on that expedition they had a survival rate of 0.7%, the lowest rate of any calamity. Because whilst other calamities naturally strike fear and horror into the you, Pap has this thing where it circumvents the human survival instinct. It makes you feel like everything's going well. In fact, better than well. Things have never been this good. I love this. And so the Pap convince you to forfeit your life for them. Our fourth thread is also a codependent calamity, this one being named I. And you should be very familiar with this one, because Narnica, the entity within Alakazoldik, is a confirmed I. They are referred to as the codependence of desire, a gaseous creature that inhabits a host and then grants desires at an equivalent, if not greater cost. And because we know about Narnica's power in such detail already, it's pretty easy to see how this threatens humanity as a whole, because big wishes cost big human lives. And in theory, if you were to make a big enough wish, that cost would eventually extend to every human in existence, which is what the Minbo Republic endured when they discovered the ice species. At first, this would have been phenomenal use for them, mate, a species that gives them whatever they ask for. This Dark Continent is pretty alright. But by the time they realized the cost, all but 3 members of their expedition had been killed. And we have very much the opposite problem with our 5th and final great calamity, Zobai, which is not a creature but a disease, one which the expedition team of the Kukanyu Kingdom were infected with, killing all but one of their infected survivors, who now lives in a state of morbid immortality. Zobai is known as the immortality disease, because if it doesn't kill you immediately, then you're going to suffer an even worse fate. It will never allow you to die. What it does is deteriorate the mind of an infected host to a very primal state, who continuously lives by eating their own flesh, which rapidly regenerates, and this goes on and on and on until, look, I don't know if it can ever end. Even if you put someone infected with this in a position that they weren't able to eat themselves, I imagine the disease would probably find another even more grotesque way to survive. Now, one thing I should note is that the expedition team that found Zobai featured Beyond Netero, the son of Chairman Isaac Netero, who returned apparently uninfected. Although this has led to a theory that Beyond Netero is the host of a Zobai disease, but has managed to retain his sanity and now lives as an immortal being among us. That's pure speculation at this stage though. However, the danger of these 5 threats cannot be understated. Other Dark Continent calamities have made their way to the human realm in the past, as it's speculated that all magical beasts take their origin from a Dark Continent creature, but as stated before, the Chimera ants were also from the Dark Continent, and they were classified with a threat level of B. Meanwhile, these 5 calamities are all a threat level of B plus to A, meaning that each and every one of them could end our species with even greater ease than the Ant King Meruem. But I'd like to put that into some even more terrifying perspective. Every calamity that we've encountered so far have been coastal calamities. Absolutely bottom of the pecking order stuff compared to what we see inland. Such as this enormous hand emerging ominously from the horizon line, or these 3 unbelievably colossal shadows, each one of them potentially twice the size of any given continent in the human realm. And then there's, whatever the crap this is, which looks like a huge floating head. And speaking of floating, one really cool thing identified on this map is the existence of sky islands that float within the Dark Continent in a manner best described as somehow. Although I don't think the word island really does them justice, because each of these islands are the size of the entire human realm. So I guess they might be nice for a bit of safety, because at the very least, everything on the lower plane of the Dark Continent is capable of killing you in unimaginably horrific ways. So with that in mind, we should probably answer a very basic question, which is, why are we trying to get to the Dark Continent in the first place? It doesn't sound particularly pleasant, and every recorded human voyage has resulted in terrible things happening. To explain this, it's important to note that the Dark Continent itself is a reference to Africa. Dark Continent was a term used by Europeans, commonly believed that it was to reference how little they knew about Africa, this dark, mysterious, magical land. But magical in a dangerous way. Although in reality, Africa was one of history's greatest marketing endeavors, as the mysterious nature of the continent was mostly hyped up by merchants who were looking to sell their acquired African goods at a very high price. So merchants would sell the equivalent of tourist trinkets and claim that they had mystical African dark continental properties. But when it comes to the Dark Continent in Hunter x Hunter, all of that is actually true. The Dark Continent is capable of killing you, again in unimaginably horrific ways, but it's also capable of granting you equally good news, as each of the aforementioned 5 calamities were encountered on a mission to acquire a revolutionary substance, one of which was nitro rice, known as the ultimate secret to longevity, and in theory could keep you living as long as you desire, so long as you keep consuming it. Nitro rice is also speculated to be the reason as to how Isaac Netero lived well beyond 100 years, and in fact he may have been several centuries old. Another highly desirable substance is the unmanned rock, a mineral ore that would forever solve energy problems, as even the teeny tiniest pebble can generate up to 20 megawatts of power per day. There's also a herb that can cure all illness, as well as substances known as the Trinity Elixir and Metallion. Their benefits are admittedly vague, but they are said to form a new foundation of their respective fields. The greater point is that if you set foot on the Dark Continent and all you do is, pick up a handful of dirt, if there's no ants in that dirt, then you'll probably find something that will make you a billionaire, which is one reason why people keep trying and failing to send teams in. However, it's important to note that not every voyage to the Dark Continent ended in catastrophic failure. Previously, I brought up Isaac Netero, and he's a curious existence because he's actually been to the Dark Continent twice, and he went on at least one occasion with Linné Orderve and Zig Zoldyck, with the reason being to find a strong opponent. In his words, he sought strength as an individual. He sought an opponent with either victory or death as an outcome. However, what Netero encountered could give him neither. There was no possible victory to be had on the Dark Continent, and no satisfying defeat to be had either. The only option available to him was to survive, and so he did twice, becoming one of the only known humans to have survived a Dark Continent voyage, as well as one of the lots that tried and failed to find what they were looking for. But something that's always struck me as odd is the question of why Netero made a second journey to the Dark Continent, given that he already knew that what he was looking for wasn't there. This journey is something that we know about, and my best guess is it was likely in an official capacity as a guide on behalf of another entity, and whether or not they succeeded is currently unknown. But what we do know is that eventually there were enough failed voyages that Isaac Netero lobbied to ban Dark Continent travel altogether, and also something to do with his son. We'll talk about that in a bit. But this was a ban that was successful and one that would not be lifted until after his death. An opportunity that has been readily seized upon by a total of 6 nations and the Hunter Association, who have pooled their resources for one big push to conquer the continent. And if I had to speculate, I'd say that it's probably not going to go very well. But this situation opens up the sheer logistical nightmare of a question that is, how do you even get to the Dark Continent in the first place? This journey is unimaginable to mankind because after passing through a barrier known as the Far Ocean Boundary, sea travel becomes impossible for human technology. Simply speaking, the waves are too big, the ocean predators are far too big, and the distance from the boundary to the actual content is so very far big it is too far to endure. And mankind has never successfully made a recorded trip to the Dark Continent on their own. If you look at series author Yoshihiro Togashi's map, you can see that there's a certain point where the waters become completely uncrossable, with waves and whirlpools the size of countries, but also a litany of sea beasts, including krakens, colossal to whales, leviathans, umibozu, which are yokai from Japanese folklore, and most curiously, there's even a mermaid and or siren ready to lure sailors to a watery grave, much like everything else. To be clear, it's hard to know how much of this is literal. Sea monsters like this used to be marked on real-world maps as well, but it was less to say beware of the giant leviathan, and more to say that, look mate, you might want to hold off because these are uncharted waters. It was mainly to denote the unknown, and the Dark Continent has a whole lot of unknown. But what we do know about that unknown is that humans cannot physically sail there on their own. And so the way you actually get to the land is by negotiating with a clan of magical beasts known as the Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper singular, although it is a race. We don't call them the Gatekeepers for some reason. We have yet to see these beings appear, but they control the only known safe pathway to the Dark Continent. However, they don't exactly ferry people there through the goodness of their own magical beast hearts, and there is a great cost to using their services. In order to successfully navigate to the land, the Gatekeeper summons another entity known as the Guide, which I imagine is an end beast they create to accompany humans with a special set of restrictions and instructions. The Guide doesn't just ferry people to the Dark Continent, but I believe also remains with them through the duration of the journey. However, the biggest role the Guide actually plays is inevitably when the journey fails, because assumedly the Guide is the one responsible for returning the very few surviving humans, but it's also the responsibility of the Guide to then curse mankind with a Dark Continent calamity, a punishment thought up by the Gatekeeper to disincentivize Dark Continent travel, to serve as a warning for any other humans wishing to embark, or to simply rid the world of humanity for daring to cross this boundary one too many times. I mean, it is called the Gatekeeper. It could be their responsibility to keep the human realm in the center of Lake Mobius safe, some sort of ancient provision put into place, because that's something that often gets overlooked with the Dark Continent. It's highly likely that humanity originated from the Dark Continent, as there is at least one recorded built city, which is where Brion was found, a species that may very well have required a human host to survive. But furthermore, in the Kakin Empire announcement broadcast on iTube, Beyond Netero claims that the ancestors of humans originated on the Dark Continent. Although Beyond Netero is far from a reliable narrator, and his word should always be taken with great skepticism. However, the fact that the Dark Continent is a reference to Africa helps a lot with this point, because the ancestors of real-world humans first appeared in Africa and then spread across the globe. So the idea would be that thousands, potentially even tens or even hundreds of thousands of years ago, in order to keep their species safe, humans could have purposely set up shop in the center of Lake Mobius. Although there is at least one human still on the Dark Continent traveling as we speak, and that would be the author of Journey to the New World, Don Freaks, a man who is at least 300 years old and likely sustaining his existence with nitro rice as he continues his mission to walk all around the shoreline of Lake Mobius and log his findings, because his book at this point is only half complete. What was found centuries ago was Journey to the New World East Edition, cataloging half of Don Freaks' journey, and that's all we currently have, because it's speculated that he's still writing the other half as we speak. However, in the meantime, we need to turn our attention back to Beyond Netero, because while his father may have sacrificed himself to protect the existence of humanity, Beyond Netero is currently threatening to sacrifice humanity to further his own incredibly bold and frankly terrifying desires.
Greedy, bruh.
Beyond Netero is the son of the late chairman Isaac Netero, and the individual who is, at the core, responsible for almost every single event that has happened during the Dark Continent and Succession War arcs. However, his story begins long before any of this. An unknown number of decades ago, because dude is really old, Isaac Netero traveled to the Dark...
Oh shit, it froze again. God damn it.
Years ago, because Beyond is also old, followed in his father's footsteps and was hired to lead his own expedition by the Kukanyu Kingdom. However, Beyond Netero ignored all of the warnings his father had given him and insisted on taking an unexplored route. This led his expedition team to the calamity Zobai, the immortality disease, which claimed all but 7 lives. Beyond was fortunate enough to survive, however, this disaster did not deter him. If anything, it only made him more excited to go back. However, Isaac Netero predicted that the impact his son's recklessness would have on humanity was unacceptable, and successfully lobbied the V5 nations to ban all travel to the Dark Continent, primarily in order to remove any avenue of access that Beyond Netero would have. This is known as the Inviolability Treaty, and it was designed so that each of the 5 powers wouldn't do something like go off on their own and put each of the others in jeopardy. And each and every single V5 nation ignored it, going on to conduct their own secret voyages, because that's politics. All of those voyages failed, brought back new calamities to the human realm, and then and only then did the V5 actually begin taking this treaty seriously. But in addition to this framework, Isaac Netero personally forbade his son to go back to the Dark Continent until after he had died, an event that came to fruition
Oh shit, it froze again, bro? Damn.
Heavily speculated that Beyond Netro was the one responsible for causing the Chimera ant outbreak, that the ants were a calamity that he had brought back with him from his voyage, and released in the one part of the human realm that would allow them to rapidly grow into a force capable of killing his father, so that Beyond could finally conduct a new expedition to the Dark Continent, something that he'd already been planning for the past 5 decades at that point, which was all very necessary time. Remember, going to the Dark Continent is the goal that Jing Freaks has been working towards his whole life, and he's barely gotten anywhere trying to implement it. According to Jing Freaks, you need 4 things to access the Dark Continent: the qualifications, the means, permission, and a contract. Now, Beyond already comes equipped with qualifications because he's been to the Dark Continent before. He also has the knowledge of his father's previous journeys, although he will actively choose to ignore that, but still, that's 1 tick. However, attaining the means, aka the finances, the people, the transport, and the equipment, is something that no single hunter could achieve on their own. Hence why Beyond Netro has spent an exceptional amount of time ideologically seducing King Nasabi of the Karkian Empire, one of the wealthiest nations on the planet, and very conveniently a nation that is not associated with the V5. Beyond told stories to King Nasabi about the vast territory, the resources, and the riches awaiting anyone willing to colonize the Dark Continent, which Nasabi was very eager to take advantage of and solidify.
Dark Continent gang, that's just not happening. Nah. Like, nah, bro, that's just not happening. Who's doing that? What generation? Because it ain't us, nigga. We ain't gonna be the ones to break through.
Hero of the Karkian Empire, essentially granting it a
fuck the Dark Continent. You know what's in them seas, bro? We have to get out them seas first to even get closer to the Dark Continent in the first
second
place.
Explosion of life. What Beyond likely neglected to tell King Nasabi, however, was about the extreme dangers of even attempting to sail there, much less the certain death that awaited them simply setting foot on the mainland. However, ultimately that probably doesn't matter, because King Nasabi isn't a fool being taken for a ride here. His personal agenda very much aligns with that of Beyond Netero, and he has his own extremely sinister reasons for wanting to conduct a voyage to the Dark Continent, being the succession contest. A life or death and then battle royale, which we'll go into detail about at a different time. But what I will say is that Nasabi, he has very few worries about the Dark Continent, because the results of this contest should theoretically ensure the Empire's safety. And with this, Beyond had succeeded in attaining the means for the voyage, which culminated in the construction of the Black Whale 1, a colonization vessel equipped to carry 200,000 passengers, almost all of whom were to be selected by lottery, with the exception of some very special people like the Karkian royal family who got to avoid that system. Although as it turns out, the lucky ones were the people who weren't selected. You really don't want to be aboard this ship, for so many reasons. But that's 2 ticks for Beyond: qualifications and the means. However, what he still needed was permission and a contract, the former of which was achieved almost laughably easily. Beyond Netero's personality has been noted by the Zodiacs as being practically identical to his father's, especially in the field of charisma. So much so that upon hearing Beyond Netero speak, each of the Zodiacs were left in stunned silence, because it was as if Isaac Netero had been reincarnated before their eyes, which I wouldn't blame anyone for actually thinking, because reincarnation was a big part of the Chimera Ant arc events. But this means that regardless of his Nen affinity, Beyond Netero is an extraordinarily skilled manipulator. So what he did was schedule a global live stream with King Nasabi to announce their intentions to travel to the Dark Continent. And during that stream, he gave the following speech: "No matter how many obstacles stand in the path to our goal, I promise I will remove them. Age, gender, nationality, employment, race, none of it matters. Everyone deserves an equal opportunity. I will turn down no challenger. Anyone who wants to win this new land is my family. Each person will have a role to play. All you need is the courage to step forward. Come one, come all. Let us go to the new world." This speech was then uploaded to iTube and got over 100 million views in an hour. So Beyond Netero was pulling in numbers that would make even Mr. Beast jealous. And what this accomplished was lighting a fire across the world. Not only did Beyond reveal the existence of the Dark Continent to the vast majority of the planet who had no idea there was an outside world, but he also made it sound like a wildly appealing place to explore. Again, selectively omitting the key dangers. But this put the V5 nations in a very difficult position, as the Karkian Empire were going to set sail with or without their permission, which obviously puts all of humanity at risk, with the only way to really stop them being to declare war, which was a strongly considered option, as according to clauses 7 to 9 of the UN Basic Relations Treaty, military intervention is permitted in the case of any perceived threat involving contagious biological hazards hazards and unknown menaces. Unknown menaces describing the Dark Continent calamities quite well. However, the V5 ended up selecting a much more peaceful yet much more greedy option. Remember, I previously said that each of these 5 countries have violated their own treaty to travel to the Dark Continent on at least one occasion, all of which were driven by greed. And now they've come together, unified by their greed, so here's the plan. The V5 invited the Kakin Empire into their organization and officially became the V6. Then together they would pool their resources to conduct the first official successful Dark Continent voyage and split the rewards between the 6 nations. That was the public position. The private position was that the V5 made a secret plan to dump the Kakin Empire on a landmass known as the New Continent and pretend it was the Dark Continent before moving on to explore the real Dark Continent themselves. And on this occasion, Togashi has perfectly depicted the hubris of humanity, because the V5 aren't trying to prevent Dark Continent access to save humans. They're just trying to make sure that they're the ones that end up with all the rewards. And all of this was foreseen and taken into account by Beyond Netero, because his speech triggered a lot of pressure from business leaders and assorted political donors to explore this option, thanks to all of the wild promises of the untold discoveries and therefore newfound profit. Speaking of, it's also worth noting that Beyond Netero also has a public and private position on this matter. What I quoted before,
and its treasures, like, nigga, you don't think that's just like dream world, boy? You don't want to go immediately until you figure out the dangers of that bitch, and you just like, oh shit, there's all types of creatures that are larger than us, and like you're not even the apex predator, nigga. Like, nigga, you the prey, we the prey in this universe. Realistically, like, niggas is like, I don't even know what you could do, like train some more. I don't know, bro.
Or that wonderful speech about equity and opportunity. That was Beyond's public opinion. But now here's the speech that he gave to his personal expedition team in private. I want to go where no one has gone before. Meet people nobody has met. Acquire things nobody has touched. I want to explore without bounds in the great wide opening, leaving my mark on virgin territory. I won't turn down anyone who joins or chase after anyone who leaves, but I'll crush anyone who tries to interfere. And there you can see the stark contrast between the man who Beyond projects himself as versus the man that he actually is. In his public speech, it was all about we and us and how I, Beyond, will protect you, the we. But in private, it's all about I and me and how you will be crushed if you get in my way, which is pretty much the exact sentiment of Beyond's late father. Something very key about Isaac Netero is that he was an incredibly selfish individual whose selfish goals usually just happened to align with what was best for humanity, such as sacrificing himself to kill the Ant King Meruem. Netero didn't do that entirely out of the goodness of his heart. He did so for the opportunity to finally face a worthy opponent. And Netero's leadership is what molded the Hunter Association, and specifically the Hunter Exam, into a trial designed to cultivate the strong and cull the weak, so that the strong could go on to grow, and again, eventually give Netero that challenge he was looking for, which you can see with the Zodiacs, who are handpicked for their unique abilities to challenge Netero in their respective fields. All of this is to say, imagine that selfishness, but geared in the exact opposite direction. Isaac Netero's desires may have aligned with humanity's prosperity, however, Beyond Netero's desires threaten to destroy the entire human race. And I think the key difference between them can be quite starkly drawn with the Dark Continent. Isaac Netero saw no personal value there for himself. There was no single challenge that he could defeat, so he lobbied to ban Dark Continent travel, thus preserving the safety of the human world and the cultivation of his little changelings. However, Beyond sees great personal value in the Dark Continent, so he concocted a plan to breach that safety and put existence as we know it into risk. Although in the end, they're both as bad as each other, because Isaac Netero hasn't exactly helped our current situation. In fact, he's the reason why every top member of the Hunter Association is now involved in this expedition, because he left a very special DVD to be played in the event that someone just popped out of nowhere and claimed to be his son. And on that DVD, Isaac Netero explained Beyond's motives, as well as their history, and finally gave the Zodiacs a single request, which was to successfully explore the Dark Continent before Beyond Netero. And I'd like to point out that Isaac Netero refers to this as not an order, it's a selfish desire of mine, which I obviously agree with, because it would seem that Netero is only willing to put humanity at risk after he's been removed from it. After he dies, like, do whatever. In fact, you know what? Help me out.
I'm not there, so y'all could just, you know what I'm saying, blow that bitch up, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? Go explore that motherfucker. Go see what's over there, I found what I needed from there, but Y'all can go over there, go investigate
out
y'all.
here and allow me to defeat my son one last time from beyond the grave. It's even been suspected by Misaistom that Isaac Netero made his death the condition in order to inspire Beyond to try and take his life, to cultivate his own son into that ultimate challenge that Isaac Netero had been seeking. That's just how the Netero family are, pretty relentlessly selfish. Now, most of the remaining Zodiacs were Netero loyalists, and they do want to complete this last will for him. However, the Hunter Association was in a pretty tough spot regardless, because the decision was very much out of their hands at this point. To bring economics into it, the V5 are the Hunter Association's biggest customers. So if the V5 make a decision to travel to the Dark Continent, then they'll be expecting the Hunter Association to comply. And so they did, with the Hunter Association now in charge of expedition transport and security. So in addition to gaining permission from the V5 nations, Beyond Netero also acquired significantly more means and qualifications for the journey. Although rather shockingly, Beyond Netero then turned himself into the Hunter Association and was promptly arrested, because after his announcement, the V5 nations requested that the Hunter Association hunt him because they needed him under their control in order to enact their Karkin plan, swiftly reaching an agreement where the Hunter Association and the V5 will supervise a Dark Continent expedition with Beyond under their strict control. So to clarify, the reason why we're taking Beyond at all, despite knowing how dangerous he is because one, even though he is going to 100% try to betray them, he is still the best guide we have. And two, because they need Beyond Netero's cooperation to fool the Karkin Empire. When they get to the new continent and drop them off, they essentially need Beyond to say, yep, this is the Dark Continent, this is the place I was talking about, enjoy. And as part of this deal, Beyond even signed a contract to remain in the custody of the Hunter Association, thus technically fulfilling all 4 Dark Continent travel requirements. However, on the side, Beyond Netero has already formed his own expedition team with his escape plan already in motion. And this team is primarily composed of temp hunters with specialized nen abilities necessary for survival. And these guys, some of them look kind of funny, but they are no joke. Do not underestimate them because they're temp hunters. Because Jing Freaks himself has ascertained that each and every one of them is a nen expert. In fact, this group is likely capable of power that would rival the entirety of the Zodiacs. And also, we should talk about that. Jing is here, in addition to some other familiar faces. For one, it was confirmed that Sayu of the Zodiacs is actually a traitor and working for Beyond Netero. However, Beyond himself doesn't know this, and that's because Sayu is working with former Zodiac Pariston Hill, who is something of a vice commander of this expedition team, and it was revealed that his whole time at the Hunter Association was spent purely setting up for this voyage, recruiting hunters with necessary abilities, gathering power, and eventually resigning from the chairman role to enact the plan. And then, of course, there's a third Zodiac in the mix as well, or in this case, former Zodiac Jing Freaks, who also resigned, sensing an opportunity to make his ambition come to reality. He then gate crashed Beyond's expedition team, causing a lot of tension with Pariston. Also, quite funnily, Beyond has no idea about anything that Jing's been doing, because he's currently in prison and will be theoretically for the duration of the voyage. As it is, Beyond is currently lying down quite comfortably in a cell guarded by 3 Zodiacs at all times, being ferried to the Dark Continent quite literally without him needing to lift even a single finger. However, Beyond does have an escape plan that will commence at some point, and also an unknown number of extra expedition members, because Beyond's agents have also infiltrated the security of the Karkin royalty, such as Bill, who is currently guarding 14th Prince Woba with Kurapika. However, all of them have since become embroiled in the deadly succession contest, with the very concept of their survival now in extreme doubt before even setting foot on the Dark Continent.
Oof. Man, we're gonna stop right here. 2920. Good little stopping point, Shit is getting crazy. This man's Beyond Netero's son got some dark intent. Well, I wouldn't say dark, but greedy, selfish intentions that, just he's not taking anything else into consideration, bro. But I think we gonna be good. We gonna figure it out, We'll be alright. Let me see. I'm trying to find where here we are. So, we gonna be, as soon as we're done with this video, we gonna start the journey. It's a year ago, so we got a year of content to catch up to. Oh shit. And we get we might end up watching this too, still. Get a little, reminder in. Yeah, bro. But now back to this though. The theory about him planting the Chimera ants is so crazy. Because when you think about it and you just hear everything that he's speaking on, it's nuts. how he said that Netero made the condition of him dying would allow fucking his son to go or whatever, something along those lines, something like that. And then him just being selfish and just telling his team, just like, yo, look, now that I'm gone, before my son fucking go investigate, go have an adventure and go fucking look at the dark continent, see what's its inhabitants and just what's in it, and just like see all the cool shit about it. How about y'all get there first, and y'all explore, and y'all get there and you do everything that he wants to do, basically. And basically them niggas just said, since he did just turn himself in, but he is still our best guy, so we're gonna bring him with us. So essentially they're kind of, them niggas just like, nah, he our best guy, we kind of need this nigga, so we just gonna bring him with us, my nigga. So he's getting what he wants regardless, which is fucking insane. And he turned himself in. It ain't even like he got caught. The nigga just turned himself in, and he's still going to the dark continent. Like, the nigga's winning. And he has his team in the cut. And apparently they powerful as shit to take on the voyages. My nigga, it's raps. I shouldn't even look at the comments because this is a 2-hour video. But yeah, bro, shit's fried. I would like to go back to that one panel of everybody though, because it was such a perfect thumbnail. Not this one. Where is it? Where is it? Come on. I might have to just find it off this recording. I don't even know I'm doing it on this recording, but yeah, bro. Dope video. I can't wait to come back to it. This is part 1 of it. He is here, chat. But if y'all want to see more videos, go ahead, check out the channel. We got currently 16 videos on the channel, probably more, because I don't know when the video is gonna come out this week, but I got a whole lot of videos lined up to come out, and we on the grind, bro. But I also have a gaming channel, so check that out as well if you all want to see more of me. And I also have a group gaming channel as well with my homies. We're kind of slowly building that back up, but we already have content built up on there, so if y'all want to see it, y'all can also check out that channel too. But I am mainly on here and my reaction channel, chat. So here and here, if y'all want to see me, those are the 2 places that I'm on. I have a Discord as well if y'all want to join. Y'all can follow me on Instagram as well. I have a Twitch that I stream. I have a Twitch channel. Twitch channel that I stream on now from weekends, either Saturdays or Sundays, depending on those days. I'm still trying to get it sorted and figured out. So those are the ideal days that I'm trying to catch. But yeah, and I'm also streaming on YouTube as well on my main channel. I'm gonna be switching it up from time to time, from going to YouTube to Twitch, and maybe if stream on both at the same time, depending on what I'm doing. But yeah, y'all, that's all I had to say. 82 Society, sub up to both of these channels, join the Discord if y'all want to see see more of me, and maybe interact with me and maybe other members of my gaming channel in the Mario Mob. But Mario Mob, 82 Society, I love y'all both. Even if you're not even a part of the Mario Mob, you're just now finding me and stuff, still love you too, bro. You know what I'm saying? Sub up, join the 82 Society, and maybe even go check out the Mario Mob. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? If you have not or have, I'm still grateful. And this motherfucking screen is frozen. Oh wait, no, it's not. All right, it's not frozen. See, that's that PTSD with this fucking OBS. But yeah, y'all, appreciate y'all for watching. That is it for today's video. If you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and leave a like, comment, subscribe to the video so another family is for content. And I'll see y'all. Hold on. And I'll see y'all in the next video, y'all. Peace.
Fuck the game. First, I'ma need me a couple of games. I'm in this bitch with a burst and need old trip. You talking about virgin again. I can't care. Fuck. Yeah. I don't care who hit first. Cause I hit worse. The bitch with a lot of still trying to strangle the fuck. Still trying to strangle the system.